Hello, and welcome to episode number 233 of the Board Game Barrage podcast, a podcast about board games, the latest hotness, how to have fun with your friends, even when you're losing. I am Kellen, the Red Tank, and with me is Mark and Neelan.
Hey.
Hello.
Today on the show, we are going to go back to a decade. And Neelan has assured me that a decade is a decade. The year 2010 to the year 2019, one game from each year that we wish we had played desperately. And the other tanks are going to fill in on if they've played that game, if they would be excited to play that game with the other tank. This is missed opportunities by year, casual connections, not casual connections, lost connections, people or things or games, mostly games that we may have missed by year. Have I got that right, guys? That's the topic?
You got the throwing on me under the bus correct when it comes to the decade grognards. There will surely be any coming after me. Yeah, 2011 to 2020, 2020 to 2019. I don't know.
It's probably not 2020 to 2019.
You're right, Mark. It's probably not that one.
Doesn't
matter.
Why do you care so much, Neil?
Because
Why do you care so much?
Because Kellen.
Ever since you moved to South Africa.
Yeah, ever since I moved to South Africa, I gained this
you
profound
seem to care a lot, yeah.
sense of the value of truth.
What even is a decade, Kellen?
That's right.
But before we get to those games that we have missed out on, not casually, we will be covering the games that we have played this week. Neelan will talk to us about Loot of Lima. I will talk to us about Yosemite. And Mark will tell us about a new Phil Walker Harding game, Planted. Neelan, why don't you start us off? And let's not define a bunch of terms and not care so much. Let's just tell us how you feel about the game.
So, So Loot of Lima, if we look at the Webster's dictionary, it defines loot as... Loot of Lima is a game from Kellen's favorite board game publisher, BoardGameTables.com. That is their name and their website. This is designed by Larry Levy, and it is a deduction game. It is a deduction game that plays anywhere between 1 and 5 players, but it seems to work best at 3 or more. The premise of this is that you're all looking for 2 pieces of treasure that have been buried somewhere on an island. So if you imagine this island that is divided into 8 sectors radially, and each of those sectors has 3 locations, one in the mountains, one in the forest, one in the beach. Possible locations, 2 of those are determined at the start. If you find both, you win. It's actually, from a win condition perspective, as simple as that. At any point in the game, regardless of which your turn, you say, I know where the 2 treasures are. You check if you're correct, and you've won. If not, you're effectively eliminated. You can no longer win. And you keep going until either everyone's eliminated and one person just wins by default, or you find the 2 pieces of treasure. The way you're going to be doing this is at the start of the game, some of these tokens are going to be distributed to the players, so you will know some locations. Much like in a game of Cluedo, you will know what some of the things aren't. You know if they're on your board, they're obviously not the 2 treasure locations. Then you're going to be asking other players questions, such as, between the cardinal directions of north and south, so on this half of the board, if you think about this as a compass dial spinning clockwise from north to south, how many tokens do you have on your board that are in the forest, for example? And that player will tell you, okay, I have 2 in that half of the board. Or you might say between southwest and southeast, so that sector of the board, how many tokens you have in total on your board. And that player tells you, you mark it on your sheet, and you eventually start to deduce, based on what other people have on the tokens in front of them, what obviously the treasure cannot be. The one limitation to this is you're going to have to roll dice in your turn, which kind of restrict a little bit what directions you're allowed to choose, so whether your sectors are allowed between which cardinal directions and which terrain types you're allowed to ask about. I'm not going to get more specific than that. Suffice to say that there is just a little bit of randomness as the nature of the question you can ask another player.
The dice determine what you can think about.
Yes, exactly. The dice limit your ability to deduce, to ask important questions. Yeah, I will say that it is not frequently that restrictive. Like, given any given dice roll, there's a whole host of stuff you could be asking. But to Kevin's point, this can be sometimes very frustrating if there's a very specific piece of information you're trying to hone in on and the dice don't allow you to do that. To that end, though, everyone starts the game with 3 single-use powers. And one of them is, hey, just ignore the dice. One of them is ask someone to
think about whatever you want.
Exactly. Think of any possible question. Another one, this is the one I think is the most fun of the special powers, is you get to ask a question in secret. So you're literally like tearing off the bottom of your slip, writing a question to someone, and then they pass it back to you. So there's this element of secret information that only you know, because this is quite important. Any question you ask to any other player, that's public information that every player of the table now gains. So it's not always to your advantage to ask something that like eliminates half of the board, for example. You have to be quite a lot more specific that the question you're asking is specifically predicated on what you know and what not everyone else knows. And to that end, this is actually one of the things that this game does really well in the context of this style of game. The information sheet, your little notes sheet, is very, very well marked and laid out with a very fair grid so that everyone has the space to record every single question asked every single player and accommodate the information that they gain from that. Now, how you use that grid exactly is still left up to you. It's not giving you the entire system of deduction right off the bat, but it gives you all the means, it gives you all the tools. You're not like scrabbling for like, oh, what did this person ask? How do I record this information? Everything that has been public information, if you're, using your sheet correctly, is perfectly trackable. What you do with that information is up to you. And I found that over the course of playing this a few times, learning to like use that system, as it is with most deduction games, was the fun, was the puzzle. I largely suspect, as is the case with a lot of deduction games, that continues to be less fun 4 or 5 games into the future, and especially becomes frustrating if you then start to bring in a new player. I can imagine if you have any player that's played this game even once or twice before, that now understands the system, the advantage that affords is huge compared to introducing this to a new player. So, bear that in mind in terms of whom you're going to be playing this with. That said, I think, BoardGameTables.com, they do lovely productions. This is, despite how simple all of that sounds, I would say a very solid one of these games. There's a lot of these in this sort of genre, stuff like Sleuth, obviously classics like Cluedo, Cryptid, for instance, which has been my most recent favorite. But Loot of Lima still kind of felt like, this was like kind of kicking in the upper echelon of the style of deduction game. As long as you're okay with what I mentioned about the dice randomness, if that's going to be something that's going to like potentially make you very frustrated that you're not rolling the specific questions you want to be able to ask, that's not going to get resolved for you, unfortunately.
I think the dice are going to be perfect for me because I'm so bad at deduction games, but I knew it all along. I was a Sherlock in my head, but when I was rolling those dice, I was just clumsy Watson. Couldn't get anything right.
Exactly.
So that's why I didn't win.
If anything, it's a good thing to blame on, when you don't happen to deduce as fast as someone else.
And how long does this game run? Is this like a quicker sort of thing, or?
This is a very pleasant 30 to 45 minutes. It's a very easy get in and out. It's maybe a touch overproduced. Like there's these beautiful little dials that everyone gets, are physical dials on their own map with little double reset boards that every single player has behind their screen. But I actually think all of that is quite lovely because it's a lavish but small production, which is kind of a little bit what Board Games Tables does. They're almost like that medium box, medium weight version of an Oink style affair where they have one box size, but all of the things have this very glossy, colorful feel.
Yeah.
I thought this was fun. Like I warned at the start, I don't know how many games of this I have on the long tail, but if I get to 5, I'll be pretty happy with that as a purchase and something that I've enjoyed my time with. That is Loot of Lima by BoardGameTables.com. Helen, what makes America the greatest country in the world?
Neelan, when you ask what makes America the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the you're talking about. Yosemite? All right. Yosemite is a review copy from WizKids, so thank you for sending that to us. Yosemite is a 2-player, under 30-minute game where you are ostensibly taking photographs of animals in Yosemite and turning those photographs in for victory points. There is movement on a grid of animals, 5x5, 25. I believe there are 5 types of animals, those being the only animals you can find in Yosemite: the red fox, the black bear, the bighorn sheep, the rattlesnake, and the cougar. This is really straightforward. You pick up animal tiles, you turn them in for photos. There's some multiplicative scoring, exponential scoring, bonuses, variability where, in this game, red foxes are worth more points. But I hesitate to say interesting, but what's interesting is that each animal moves in a different way. So the red fox can move up to 1, 2, 3 spaces when you're on top of it. The bear moves 2 spaces in one direction, and then you can move your opponent's space. The snake can go on top of other people and then move them 1 space, and the cougar pounces around the board. So my review of Yosemite, I can tell you 2 things. Okay, guys? The tiles are thick. They're very thick. And the art, Beth Sobel, very good. Very beautiful. And this is probably where WizKids wishes they had not sent the game to me. Yeah, this was super plain, super vanilla. You've played this 100 times if you've played any other games. And it's really annoying. The ability that you pick up animals first in a turn, right, means that you have to get to where you want to go for your set by the end of your previous turn. And so often what you're doing with these rattlesnakes and these cougars is you're blocking people and moving them 1 space away from where they want to be. So it's like, yes, I got to the tile I want that has the bonus on it that I want, and then, oh, Kellen moved me 1 away. Oh, Christina moved me 1 off. Oh, Kellen moved me 1 away. My guess is that Christina and I have played the world's most aggressive, mean game of Yosemite. It does say that you don't have to move your opponent's pieces, so there's a little bit of like Care Bear aesthetic, but we were just like literally every rattlesnake in Yosemite bit us, every cougar charged us, where it was just like back and forth. I think we elongated the game so much because we were so focused on just hitting each other off of the space you wanted. But again, it's not like you can hit them off a space and then take what they want. It's literally like, oh, I want to go there. Oh, no, you don't. Oh, I want to go there. Oh, no, you don't. Over and over and over again. It's just not good. And then the balance is like atrocious, right? Okay. There are 20 photo cards, which are the cards with animals on them for endgame scoring. They also correspond to a location, and you can pick up location tiles, and that's how you get the exponential bonuses. As in, if I have the El Capitan location, and then every photo card I collect is going to give me more and more points that are in that region. Except there are only 20 photo cards in the game, and you take out 10 of them before the game even starts. So you have no idea which sets are going to be more important than other sets. And so you're fighting over getting those bonus tiles, but then there's no reason to know whether that will work out or not. I won, obviously, due to my superior strategic skills, and not because more of my cards were in the photo deck than her. It just feels like, and I can't speculate, but I will, that Trails and Parks and all those other games came out and they're like, what? We could do this too. It's very beautiful. Again, there's nothing new in this at all. Like, it's literally like, I feel like an AI could write the rule book after reading the first half of the rule book.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but like when I saw the box cover for this, my instant reaction was, oh yeah, this was a response to Parks. Like, they're very, very obviously evoking that. You know, like, these aesthetic choices don't happen by accident.
I don't know. I was distraught after we were done. It's interesting, right? The designer has another game that I've really wanted to play called Bumuntu.
Yeah, me too.
That was well received from 2019, and in fact looks like it has some similarities. I haven't read the rulebook for that, but just looking at the board, you're stepping on animal tokens that I believe affect how your movement happens. So almost like this is like a spin-off, like Baby's First of that game. But yeah, yeah, that's Yosemite.
I was hoping when you were describing it, and you may have mentioned this earlier, but I was hoping that your issues might have just stemmed from the fact that you played it 2 players and maybe a third player would have added something. But then in looking at it, I realized that it is only a 2-player game. So these are sort of inherent issues, unfortunately, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's just so perfunctory. It's like the bonus, it's like...
Yeah.
You could just map it all out, and then the animal movement might be the interesting thing. But it's like, this type of animal moves 1, 2, or 3 spaces. This type of animal moves 1 or 2 spaces in one direction. This type of animal can land on your space and move you 1 space away. So even the attacking was just like super annoying. It was just really annoying. But you're taking photos of animals in Yosemite, and so that is what makes America the greatest country in the world. Mark, why don't you uplift us with Planted?
You got it. I got a chance to play Planted, a game of nature and nurture by Phil Walker Harding, who has been designing light to midweight games for years now, most notably games like Sushi Go, Barren Park, Gizmos, and more recently, a couple of games we reviewed, such as Llama Land, Snakes, and Summer Camp. Planted is no exception to these games as far as weight and approachability goes. In Planted, you are in a cutthroat competition with your opponents to build the greatest collection of houseplants. That's a joke. The way it works is that everyone will start with...
not?
What? It's funny. I said cutthroat competition, houseplants. It's like, it's sort of juxtaposition of cutthroat and houseplants. It's supposed to be funny. People here had a sense of humor and they'd laugh. Anyhow, the way it works is that everyone starts with a plant that needs some combination of sunlight, water, and plant food, as plants do. So, for example, my golden pothos, which is my beginning plant, believe it or not. Can you believe that, Neelan? I had a golden pothos to start.
I have a golden pothos in my apartment, so I can...
Oh, there you go. So if you had been playing, you'd have an advantage. You would have known already what it needed. Yeah. So my golden pothos needed, as Neelan would have already guessed, 1 water and 2 plant food. Obviously.
Yep, that's it. That's just like real life.
Yeah, you just put 2 plant foods in there and 1 water.
Yeah. Not more than 2, not less.
Love is not a resource.
Kellen,
These plants.
This is scientific. Don't around with like that. You then start with a hand of 8 cards and draft one Sushi Go style, waiting until everyone else has picked a card, at which point they're all revealed. Most of the cards are going to show 1 or 2 of these 3 resources, sunlight, water, or plant food, at which point you'll pick them out from the supply and put them on your personal board. Then you'll take the cards your opponents didn't use and just hand it to you, pick one, and so on and so forth until the round is over after all 8 cards have been played, at which point you'll use the resources you've just acquired to feed the plant, placing a marker on it for some amount of victory points at the end of the game. In addition to the cards you draft that are just straight up resources, there are 2 other types of cards. One are called tools, which give you a passive benefit when you draft a certain type of resource. So you might pick a tool that says whenever you draft a 2 water card, you get an extra droplet of water. Furthermore, you can stack this with another of the exact same tool. So if you have 2 copies of that same card, then when you draft one of those 2 water droplet cards, you get not 1, but 2 bonus water. So you can sort of buff those up like that. Also, there are decoration cards, which will give you an end-of-game scoring based on certain criteria. So one might say, for every hanging plant you have, you get a point. And, like the tools, if you draft 2 of those exact same decoration cards, for every hanging plant you'd have 2 points for each one. Finally, the last thing you can do in your turn is to discard a card out of the game instead of drafting it in order to select a new plant from the array and add it to your collection, and now it becomes a new plant that you're trying to grow. Basically, you do this for 4 rounds and then score, and then that's the game. The obvious comparison people will make to this game, and in fact, I've already made...
Sushi Go.
Sushi Go. Boom.
Was that obvious? Was I obvious?
You were obvious, but it worked. I asked for the obvious comparison.
But no, I'm saying you're the obvious person to talk about this because you really have used Sushi Go often with newcomers and non-gamers and often talk it up.
I see that you've been listening to the podcast, Colin. I appreciate that.
I listen when you speak, Fred.
I know. I could tell. So yes, Sushi Go is the obvious example. For me, the game that really comes to mind when I play this was Walker Harding's Summer Camp. That felt very much like a family weight plus introduction to deck building. The way that this, for me, feels like a family weight plus introduction to drafting and engine building, sort of. Speaking of the approachability that I spoke to about earlier, the art is lovely and cozy. The resources come in these burlappy sort of bags, and the resources themselves are these very vibrant, soft plastic pieces that you can't help but want to roll around your fingers. So absolutely great production. And the game itself is fine, and it does what I think it sets out to presumably do, which is be a game that you can relatively easily teach to quote-unquote non-gamers. You can teach in about 15 to 20 minutes, and then you play it in 30 to 40 minutes tops. That said, like Summer Camp, I think this is probably too light for someone who is steeped in the hobby to play with people who are likewise into that level of board gaming. It's not to say that I didn't enjoy myself and that I didn't have a couple of interesting decisions to make along the way. It's just for how light it is, I'll likely only take this out when I have, again, non-gaming family and friends over who want to play something, which is not nothing. That's something to want or is desirable in a game, but rarely any other time. So if you're looking for something light and pretty, absolutely look at Planted. But if your tastes are heavier or you play with a group who even, like, I'd say consistently likes playing midweight games, then there's probably not enough here, I think, to satisfy you for too long.
I feel like there's another comparison I can't help but make by looking at this, which is to Wingspan, which is to say that game mechanics notwithstanding, although, you did mention card-based engine building, but they're very much leaning into like, hey, these are beautiful, like, soft pastel pictures that have like the scientific names of the plants in each of them, and this aspect of getting each species of plant is like part of the appeal of this, right? Like, someone looks at a box and sees a game about growing house plants. That's a theme you don't often see, and I think it's almost certainly going to have appeal on that level.
Yeah, and Wingspan is a game that I thought of as well, but this is a way stripped down.
Oh, sure. Oh, totally.
This is like Wingspan pulled back like 4 or 5 notches for sure. But yeah, this might be like a step into Wingspan for sure, but not as many choices, not as much complexity by a long shot, I think, in this versus Wingspan.
But what's the direct comparison to Sushi Go, right? Because that is also ultra light. So is this lighter?
This is not as light as Sushi Go, but the problem is it's like what it adds, which is like the engine building, tableau building sort of thing, I don't think balances out for the simplicity of Sushi Go. Like, I think Sushi Go is a simpler game, and what's added on here, while making it a little bit heavier, I think that on balance, I would prefer Sushi Go because while it's only drafting, it moves so quickly and the simplicity of it buoys Sushi Go, whereas the complexity that's added here to Planted doesn't really do that much to enhance the experience.
Is there still that tension, like you took my pudding, you
A little bit. There is a little bit of a race for like the different kinds of plants. Like, for example, if somebody has a card that says you get a bonus point or bonus 2 points for having a hanging plant, and somebody else at the table has that same bonus, and there's only one in the array, there's a little bit of a, hey, I've got a card here that I really want because I really need 2 plant food, but if I don't take the chance to grab one of those cards from the array now, I might lose it. But that is something that happens once or twice or 3 times a game. It's not really an integral part of the game as much as it is in Sushi Go, where, if somebody is like playing puddings and you're worried about being left behind, you really need to act on it, and it's more an integral part of Sushi Go. This is just something that happens once or twice in Planted, not nearly as much.
Got it.
And that is Planted by Phil Walker Harding and Buffalo Games.
For those that care about editorial accuracy, the name of this game is actually Planted: a game of nature and nurture.
And for those who care about my accuracy, I did mention a game of nature and nurture. I left out the colon, but to each their own.
And for those who care about pronunciation, I'm pretty sure it's Planted.
All right. We're striking all of that. Only my joke makes it in. I do declare. This is my episode. So let us jump right into our featured topic. The goal today is to share with you 10 games from each of us that we are eager to try, that we have missed out on from the decade known as, I'm not even going to try, from 2010 to 2019, to be accurate per Neelan, because we would never want to be inaccurate. So this is going to be rapid fire. We're going to be sharing these games, what we know about them and why we're interested in trying them, and then the other tanks will fill in if they've played them, if they think we will enjoy the game. And then you, the listener, we would love for you to reach out and tell us, Kellen, Neelan, or Mark, you must try that game. This is the things we missed from a decade long past.
Long past 2 years ago.
And Mark doesn't know how to let dramatic tension rise. He just jumps in with words when they're not needed. You let the silence do the tension. All right, we are going to start in 2010 with Neelan.
I think right off the bat, I don't think either of you have played this, but I was looking down the whole list of games, the entire list, every single game that came out in 2010. I mean, this was like the clear winner. Like, this is Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game. This is a game that it makes no sense that I haven't played yet. I am a huge diehard fan of Civilization, the video game. It is a game that very much is almost trying to replicate a board game in video game form. So it almost just feels like a natural fit that it would work as a board game. And in fact, we know it works as a board game. We knew it works as a board game because as much as Sid Meier will deny it, Civilization and Advanced Civilization had existed for 10 years prior to the existence of the video game. So when someone says, hey, we're going to take that common core, we're going to turn it back into a board game, and by all accounts, it is quite a good, epic 4X experience, that sounds like something I'm going to love.
But is that the one? The 2010 is the one? Didn't Bigney give us the rundown on this?
Yeah.
There's like 70 million versions, Civilization, Advanced
Absolutely.
Civilization.
So no disrespect to Mark Bigney, but he's a purist. I'm going to want to play Advanced Civilization as well. That is the version as recommended by Mr. Bigney himself.
Bigney knows what a decade is and like when it starts and when it ends.
If I was allowed to include a game from the 80s in here, I would have included Advanced Civilization. But no, I'm as interested in Sid Meier's Civilization as I am in Advanced Civilization. Like, this is the progeny that birthed my love for this genre, is rooted in the video game. So I have to try this. In fact, Buffer in our Discord was kind enough to have sent me a copy of this. I've still not played, and I'm extremely sorry for that. We will make that happen. That's Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game.
The game I chose for 2010 was buoyed by the fact that I played another of this fella's designs, Fast Sloths. So my selection for 2010 is Black Friday by Friedman Friese. A quick sort of funny note, as many people know, Friese is an eccentric game designer who likes to have games start with Fs. All his games start with Fs, and they have a green hue, which matches his green hair. And I was just looking at information on Friday, and he says that he started the design on Friday the 24th at Essen, and he worked on it every Friday for the next 5 years, and then released it on a Friday, which I completely buy, given it's a Friedman Friese game. I'm interested in it because it's his take on stock market and like bubble bursting in stock market games. It's one of the few Frieses that I've never played, and one that I'm eager to try out. I think his takes on games are always unique, and so very interested to see his take on a stock market game, Black Friday from 2010.
This one has been on so many geek lists of games that I'd be interested in checking out that the cover is burned into my mind as something I should have already purchased. So it's been in and out of my consciousness for a while. You guys are using some of these like buoyed and progenied and birthed. I think I need to level up my language because I'm running out of to give about this vocabulary. My 2010 game is a small game. It is a shame that I have not tried Haggis. I assume that's how you pronounce it. That is a 3-player climbing game. So this is in the realm of Tichu, in the realm of Chimera, right? Which is another 3-player one that I think when we covered Chimera, people were like, have you not played Haggis, you idiot? And again, I am the idiot who has not played Haggis. It feels like it's just missing from my collection. Have either of you played this?
I have not, no.
Yeah, well, so we 3 idiots will march on into 2011. What you got for us, Neelan?
I've eaten Haggis, if that counts.
Oh, is that a place?
No, it's a dish.
It's stuffed, a food?
It's stuffed.
I would say sheep's stomach or some stomach stuffed with like black pudding and all sorts of gross stuff.
That's the absolute perfect theme. Couldn't have themed it better myself.
My game, as we go into 2011, is actually very appropriate that we just called out Mr. Mark Bigney, because this is all entirely derived from him. Sentinels of the Multiverse is a game that I have heard Mark Bigney talk about at length over the years on his podcast, So Very Wrong About Games. This is a cooperative superhero card game that I want to say is very much in the veins of where something like Marvel Champions. I think that is a ultimately simpler game than Sentinels of the Multiverse. I'm very curious to try this. I don't know if it holds up 10 years later in the wake of other cooperative card games I've since played then, but I think that there are a lot of people that have a lot of good things to say about Sentinels over the years, enough so that I am very curious to give it a shot.
Yeah, so I have played this, and my hot take is that it's too long and too fiddly, but that you would enjoy it. I remember feeling like there's a lot of variability, right, in terms of what enemy you're facing and then what each hero does. And you're handed your deck, and you're like, wow, I'm doing a whole different thing than what my friend is really the attacker, and I'm making sure all the cards are flowing between everybody. But then you also need like an app to keep track of all the status effects because it gets wild. Yeah, and like I think the app is almost like required to play the game. So
that's the thing I've heard, is just that the bookkeeping gets tedious. But, as someone that's gone through the ringer on this with Gloomhaven, I feel like I'm ready for it. But that could definitely be a downside for sure.
What will kill you from wanting to play this is forget the game, forget the app. Just play the digital version of this game. And that's really the best way to play it, honestly.
Okay.
Because, like, there's so many +1 counters and all these little things you have to add. And when you play the digital version, it's like a situation where it's a digital version that once you play it, I think you never can go back to the board game. Because it's just the bookkeeping is so well done.
I mean, that's almost incentive enough for me to just, like, give this a go, like, sooner rather than later, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'll try that digitally. That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, that's Sentinels of the Multiverse.
My pick for 2011 is a game that was released by the IPN, which is a Polish, I think, governmental institute. Its main responsibilities include taking over and providing access to archives of communist repressive apparatus. This is a game called Kolejka. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, but it is about a life in Poland during the tail end of the communist era. It was released by a governmental agency. I think that was like an anti-communist governmental agency, but it's about sending your family out to the store to get groceries, but the stores are empty. And it's sort of reminds me a little bit of, I think this is an accurate assessment, but I'm not the video game guy, but Papers, Please. That's sort of like Dower. Sort of. It's a really, really weird game. Again, released in Poland by this like governmental agency, but it's caught on a little bit as a, hey, this is actually a pretty interesting game. One that I've never played, never got my hands on. Casey, Brain in a Jar, offered to bring it to Dice Tower West, and I stupidly turned her down. I should have had her bring it out because I've always wanted to play it. But yeah, my 2011 pick is Kolejka.
Sounds fascinating.
Is it a game if it's propaganda? Can propaganda be a game?
That's the ultimate question. No, it is. Look, it has hand management, set collection, worker placement. I mean, what more do you want?
What more do I want? I want to head directly to space, my 2011 game, and perhaps in the running for my most biggest oversight of all time is Eclipse. So when Eclipse came out, it was billed as the Euroified Twilight Imperium, and as many of you know, I don't like Twilight Imperium and I don't like Euros, so why would I try Eclipse? But I have softened on Euros in the barrage of Euros that have come out from 2010 to 2020. They just keep throwing them at me. And the length of play is on the side that I want it to be on, and Neelan is a big fan of it. You would think that because Eclipse is one of his favorite games, he would want to play it with one of his favorite people, and yet somehow here we are. Neelan, how do you respond?
Well, my response to that is I've only played this a couple of times, so I don't know that I'm qualified to say it's one of my favorite games, and I've only played the original, but that said, all of that aside, yes, we have to play this. We absolutely have to play this. I have the second edition. I have not played the second edition yet, which in itself is a crime, and yeah.
Second edition has a colon in it, though.
Sorry, Eclipse : Second Dawn for the Galaxy.
Thank you.
But yeah, we have to make this happen. 100%.
Let us quickly move to 2012, and I just want to, for the record, say I still have not graduated college by this point, while these old men were already divorced and chasing their second wives.
Oh, this would be great if we'd all included little historical timelines of our lives as part of this.
Oh my God.
Oh man. 2012, Neelan is a bright, bushy-tailed, bright-eyed person, and he will later find out about a game from his good friend Kellen, who will not shut up about Spartacus, a game of blood and treachery. Kellen...
Double crossover.
Oh, perfect.
Still haven't played it, but I really want to.
Yeah, I think almost as long as I've known Kellen, he's been talking about, hey, there's this game that I hear is shockingly good that's based on this TV show that's and by all accounts supposed to be quite excellent. And I think this came up as recently as last week as a game that we were itching to try.
It was re-released by Gale Force
That's right.
9 just recently without the TV show artwork. So if you're interested in like a fighty, you're like raising your gladiators and then you send them into fight and you can like bid on them against each other and sort of trade. It looks wild and very interactive. So one that must get played.
Little peek behind the curtain here. I have about 5 games for every year that could be on my list, but 2012 was the one that was hardest to pick. I only have a couple for 2012. I almost went with Rex, the rich game that was the inspiration for Scythe, as I mentioned before.
It was the inspiration for the novel Dune as well.
I almost went with Andean Abyss, which is one of the most approachable coin games, but I didn't want these guys to give me any more coin game So the one I'm going with is another Frieza game. So Frieza 2 for 3 here for me. And this is Copycat. which is another weird Frieza game where he tries to incorporate a whole bunch of different game mechanisms that he likes from other games all in one. So I believe he has like deck building from Dominion. He was inspired for the worker placement from Agricola. Racing games he mentions that he was interested that he was playing in. So this is sort of like feels a little bit like a 504 situation that he would create later where it's like 504 games based on how you configure them. But here he's just like throwing in all these mechanisms that he's interested in all in one sort of game. I hear it's not super great, but it just, again, Frieza games are almost always at the very least interesting. So this is one that I've always wanted to try, Copycat.
I absolutely love the ethos of this one, that this was made and that it's sort of like, I'm copying all of you. It's like he's trolling to some extent.
Sure.
And I'm here for it. Except the cover is not as green as all the other covers. Eh?
No, it isn't. But you do get Frieza himself right there, so that makes up for it, I think.
Yeah, he put himself on the cover. Yeah. Let us transition the year to 2013. Neelan, what you got for us?
So in 2013, one of the things that I found hard to do on this list is, when you're looking at the list of games, it's so hard to avoid picking games that are in the top 100 because you think that they're maybe there for a reason, right? But it's also like, should I dig a little bit deeper? But then I just kept coming back to Caverna, which it almost feels like from a due diligence perspective, the fact that I haven't played this is absurd. On the other hand, Uwe Rosenberg has already made the perfect game, which is A Feast for Odin, so this could only be a downgrade from that.
Well, he hadn't in 2013.
Exactly.
In 2013. When you, the idiot, missed your casual connection with Caverna.
Exactly. But had I played Caverna back in 2013, I don't know, maybe it would have been my favorite game. Maybe I would have been on the Uwe train like way, way, way earlier. Caverna is like the follow-on, as it were, from Agricola, which has been a game that's been in my top 50 since the beginning of the podcast. Again, all reasons why I should have played this game. For some reason, I played the 2-player cave vs. cave version of this, but I have not played, Big Brother Caverna. I feel like it's one of those weird things where on one hand, I'm like, do I still need to play this? And I'm torn. But on the other hand, I just feel like it's, like I said, negligence. Just, I have to, at some point, add this to, like, my internal catalog.
I hadn't realized, so Caverna is also mine, double crossover. I like the fact that we have all played games together for so long could lead us to a scenario where the games that we select are the same. Caverna is funny to me because it followed the same timeline as the sort of Harvest Moon video games, which turned into fantasy Harvest Moon video games. I just find it funny. I know this is one of the favorite games that I talked about with the Going Analog podcast as well. Here it's looser than Agricola, which I dislike, but the theme is I prefer to Agricola, so I would love to get in a game of Caverna to see how this one works.
Totally. And
of all the Uwe games like that I have not, there's a lot of Uwe. I haven't done Glass Road or Fields of Arle. I'm sure it's not Arle. This one is the one that sticks out as like the missing piece from my collection.
I mean, that's a good point in itself. As we go down the list, there are other Uwe games that I neglected to choose because it just kind of felt like this is the one. This is the one that I should play of his. But yeah, we should do that. I mean, we could do it at 7 players, so why wouldn't we?
Yes.
I have played Caverna, and I did enjoy it. It isn't as tight as Agricola, but there are other trade-offs that I think would make it a fun game for sure. So I would recommend it. My 2013 game, which was another tough year for me to pick, but I went with a game that I was first turned on to by a certain Mr. Tom Vassell. This is Duel of Ages 2. Which
I almost picked this one.
Okay, yeah. So this is a game where I think it's like sort of like a scrimmage game where you're picking a team versus another team. But the conceit here, the draw here is that you're picking characters from all timelines, all decades. So you can have like a team of like Napoleon plus World War II infantrymen versus like, I don't know, Albert Einstein and Joan of Arc, like some crazy thing like that. And just that appeals to me, that whole like asynchronous, like a chronological thing. It feels to me like a game that will show its age a lot. There's going to be like, I know there's a lot of dice rolling and I know there's like a lot of like hex-based movement. So I wouldn't necessarily go in expecting like the most elegantly designed game, but it just seems like for what it is, the most of what it is. Like you're looking for characters to select from. Seems like you have it here. I know there's a ton of fan-made variants and extra characters. So just like super, super rich in terms of like character design and all these different things you can select from. So for me, it's Duel of Ages 2 from 2013.
And that was Tom Vassell's number 1 game for a long time before it became Cosmic Encounter, and then it became Gloomhaven, and now it changes every year with Ark Nova.
Ark Nova.
the best game ever made.
A game that will stand the test of time.
Well, and, you also got to think about the types of even board game media, right? Like, this is definitely the era where I was listening to the Dice Tower podcast weekly.
Sure.
So, that's coming up in your brain, and never got to it.
Definitely.
Let us turn... I don't know. There's supposed to be a good transition for all these years, but I have a very poor memory about like what happened in any of these times. I often only can remember when I was a certain age based on getting a "you turn 24" edible arrangement from my mom. Okay, I have like a picture of it burned in my mind that I was in New York when I got the edible arrangement with 24. So oftentimes that's how I figure out what year something happened, is I figure out when that was, and then I go forward or I go back. So we're still pre-edible arrangement, but we're getting very close. 2014, Neelan, what do you got for us?
My 2014 game is Kanban, and, this is off of the back of Mark Basada, another Mark, incessantly.
Yeah, I know that guy.
Telling me all the time, non-stop, that I need to play Kanban. It's your favorite Lacerda? Am I saying that? Is that correct, Mark?
It used to be. I think now it's probably...
Gotcha. Anyway, it was definitely the game that I think got you crazy about Lacerda.
Yeah, it's definitely the one that felt like it was going to be a mountain that I could never climb, because I'd heard all this stuff about how complicated his games were, and then I actually played it, and I said, hey, it's not only this is like something I can actually play and understand, but it's also fun.
I like the theme about this a lot. The idea of assembly line that players are managing is fun. This is now going to be re-implemented in a simplified form in Bot Factory, which is, I think, just finished its run on Kickstarter, actually. So probably a lot of...
You think or because you backed it, Neelan. Don't lie that you think... Yeah, you think.
Yeah, I may have backed it, Kellen, so what? It looks good. Making robots. Sandra's there. What?
Okay. The problem we have here is Neelan and I still have not met yet, right? And yet somehow we have our third crossover in a row.
Oh my God.
Kanban, my 2014 selection. The automotive theme, Mark's love for it, but now I hear it's third best, but... Dear God, if Escape Plan is in one of the two higher spots, Kanban is stricken from the list.
Do not worry about that.
It sounds like Neelan and I need a double crossover night where we've currently got Spartacus and
right,
Kanban.
Exactly.
This is not a very themed game night, but there is a theme, and the theme is us.
The theme is friendship, Kellen.
I love it. My 2014 game is Kanban. No, it is not. It is Wir sind das Volk, which is a game about the separation of East and West Germany. Surprise, surprise, a Mark game. This is by Richard Seville, but also by Peter Sylvester, who is known for The King's Dead, known for, more recently, Brian Boru. Designer who, when he makes games, makes them with very, very tough, tight choices. Like, his games tend to be fairly simple, but just filled with really, really tough decisions to make. This is what I've heard about Wir sind das Volk. I've actually owned this game a couple times, but traded it away just because I could never find the other person to play with. And it feels like a game that is a little bit on the long side. I think it goes maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and doesn't seem like the most approachable game to teach, but one that has always struck me as interesting, and also one that I've heard good things from people who have played it, including Second of the New from our Discord channel is, I believe, a pretty big fan of Wir sind das Volk. So my game from 2014 is Peter Sylvester's Wir sind das Volk.
All right, let's turn the table to 2015, which may be the year Neelan and I met. It's either 2015 or 2016.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Try to dig it up. It's thereabouts. My game for 2015 is a game that Quins of Shut Up and Sit Down almost completely poisoned for me. This is Kingdom Death Monster. This firstly lost us the Shut Up and Sit Down draft, but despite that, I would like to try this game. It is a game of assembling your party, going out and fighting bigger and bigger monsters. Like, it is about these big, epic, effectively boss fights against increasingly escalating creatures that are all represented through these lavish miniatures. This is a game that's almost like absurd in its production values, just because of like how much sheer plastic there is, both in like the size of these minis and just like how detailed and intricate they are. Seeing people with fully painted sets of like Kingdom Death Monster, and that no one has a complete set of Kingdom Death Monster because there's just too much stuff. But people that have like painted all of this, it looks beautiful. It's incredible. It's such a ridiculous proposition. It's a thing that I don't know that I could bring myself to own, but at some point feel like I have to play.
Yes. My take now thinking about it, and at first I was like, ooh, and now I think you would like this. My friend who owns it has like an entire bookshelf of it, so good luck with that problem. But the sort of resource, and I say resource management, not like a board game, sort of like city management that is video game-esque, where you're sort of investing in different things that are going to help you in different ways with the encounters. And then you move into like that grid with the lion and things happen. I've only played Kingdom Death Monster once. I suspect that you, with your friend group that is not me, your video game friends, could very much get into this in a similar way to Gloomhaven. Mechanically, probably a little less solid, but from like a world and from like something that you're invested in, like what you've like built together, I think you guys would really like that.
Yeah, that sounds rad.
My 2015 game is one that Nealon has brought to the forefront for me. This is Through the Ages, a new story of civilization. A game that, if I think about the games that I think are biggest holes in my game playing history, probably Through the Ages is one of the top, I would say top 5. I think I'll eventually play this first in its digital implementation, which I've heard is really good. But yeah, I just like the idea of, again, a lot like Duel of Ages, this sort of overarching crazy historical story of growing a civilization with a bunch of characters from history making appearances. So yeah, a game that I really, really want to play. Through the Ages, a new story of civilization.
I sometimes forget that you have not played this, Mark, because it's a game that I'm extremely confident that you will love. Very light dusting of historicity, not to the extent of the games you tend to like, but, you know, having real world people and real world places and that sort of thing, married with the card tableau building. It's so you. It's very, very PAX. It's very you.
Okay. No, my God.
Here we go.
I have to fight you. Okay. It's very good. It is not very PAX. Like, PAX is inherent in the tension between players, and Through the Ages is all of that type of thinking, but it's you versus the game, not you versus the player.
Sure, totally. And to be clear, like, I said that from the perspective of just largely, like, the card tableau build.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
The idea of a card market, like, that system. Yes, you're right. It doesn't... I guess in game feel, it probably couldn't be further from that degree of interaction. But I'll stress this, it's not a non-interactive game, especially at 2 players. It's quite cutthroat.
It's interesting you mentioned PAX because the second game on the list, if it wasn't Through the Ages, it would be Pax Porfiriana. So those are the top 2 for me for 2015.
Yeah, you don't like Pax Porfiriana? You
I want
play that, one of my favorite games?
I definitely want to play that.
Speaking...
In my head, I'm going to teach you Through the Ages this week, Mark.
Okay, sure. I love it. I don't know how that works
in your head,
but yeah, why not in real life?
Speaking of problematic themes, 2015 is host to a game that I am very excited is coming back this year with a less problematic theme, and that is a game from one Mr. Pfister himself, Mombasa, coming back this year as Sky Mines. We are subbing out the colonialism for cryptocurrency in space. Obviously, much less problematic. No, I don't know what happens with these themes. I don't know how this happens to Mr. Pfister, but Mr. Pfister has made incredible games like Broom Service and Great Western Trail, Isle of Skye, some people love, myself not included. But Mombasa has always just struck me. People say, oh, you must play with 4 players, right? And that when you do, it unlocks this level, like there's an interaction here, right, that I think is not as present in other more Euro-y games. Mark, I know you've played Mombasa. Nealon, have you played Mombasa?
I have. Only once. But it's long enough ago that I don't have a good sense of it, to be fair.
Not only did I play Mombasa, I've played it this week. So
wow. What?
A very fresh take on Mombasa. Yeah, it's a very good game. And there is a lot of interaction. There is a sort of fight on the board for space. It's not a troops on the map game. It's not that level of interactive, but you definitely do need to keep an eye on what other people are doing and be willing to fight them for space on the board for sure. It's a very good, very unique Euro.
I'm hoping to get Sky Mines this year and have that played. Let us move on to 2016.
My 2016 game is, I know, one that I'm going to get pushed back instantly from. This is Arkham Horror the card game. I have owned Arkham the Horror the card game almost since 2016. I recently did the dumb thing of selling my copy of it and then buying the new core box of it, which is don't get me started on how stupid a thing to do that is for a game that I've been telling myself I've been going to be playing for like the last 7 years. People who like Arkham Horror, the card game, I have to shout out Brandon, good friend of ours, and also in our Discord. This is his favorite game, right?
I mean, if you attend conventions for one game, it is your favorite or among your favorite game.
The people that are really into this rave about how well this works from a deck construction. You are building your deck based on cards you're acquiring from new expansions between games. So you're upgrading and changing your deck and uncovering new story as you work through all these scenarios and campaigns. It's a storytelling game that has like a cooperative deck construction aspect, which is just such an intriguing mix of mechanics, mix of context for me that I think I would really, really enjoy. The Cthulhu theme definitely has me slightly worried, but I still think that I would probably enjoy this a huge deal. When I will find the time to get into this, uncertain.
My 2016 pick is another game that feels like a huge hole in my board game experience. And this is one that I've wanted to play for years and years and years, and I've had for years and years and years. And this is Arkwright. This is like the, in my mind, prototypical heavy, dry Euro. It's a 4.6 in weight on BGG, and it is very, very plain looking. A lot of pastels and browns and grays, but one that I've heard very good things about and just theoretically scratches an itch for me of like that just very heavy, dry Euro where it's just like thinking and planning and stuff like that. So yeah, Arkwright is a game that I want to play forever. I know Capstone just took over publishing this, so one that I expect to play before too long. So that is Arkwright.
Economic as well, right?
Yeah, economic too, yes.
Very economic.
Very economic. And also interested in playing Arkwright, the card game, which came out, I think, this year or last year. So that's me.
2016 was the hardest year for me. It may also be the year that I played the most games
Sure,
ever.
yeah.
I start wondering about something like that. For me, Adrenaline is one I never got to play. It is a FPS Euro game, which is hilarious. So you are playing a Doom arena shooter game, but the mechanics that you're using are somehow Euro-y. I know Neelan has played, liked, bought and sold Adrenaline, I think, all in the case of me not having played it.
And reacquired. So I now, yeah.
Reacquired!
There was in one of the rare cases of just me going, you know what, I really liked Adrenaline. I don't know why I got rid of that. Like, it's good. It is a very Eurified game, but I think the theme, and it is pure interaction. You are, despite it being a Euro game, walking up to someone and shooting them in a way that hurts them and helps you. So it's
turn that into a Euro game.
I think you'll dig this. It's very silly.
Yeah, I like Adrenaline too.
2017. Has the podcast started yet? It hasn't.
That's not.
No, that's not yet.
Is a twinkle in Callan's eye at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yes. And then it got impregnated into the two of you.
That's right.
What is that the words we're using?
Yeah, that's exactly what
and
we're
our
using.
and then our progeny came out, and that was the podcast.
That's right.
2017. I actually think, now that you mentioned it, Callan, I did see this game at the Gen Con we attended that year in 2017, just in the nascent board game Barrage version that existed in 2017. This is This War of Mine. This is a storytelling game that is theoretically co-op, but I think most people would argue that it's primarily a solo game. It is very much in the vein of like, hey, you're going to make choices. Those choices are going to be hard, and the story is going to evolve in a sort of choose your own adventure-ish type sense, but married with what is a survival game where you have a small camp of survivors and you're desperately doing everything you can to keep them alive in the ravages of like a post-war world. So it's a pretty heavy theme. Having played the video game that this is based on, it's quite a hard theme, but one that I understand that the board game actually does justice to, as the video game did as well. So that is This War of Mine, the board game.
I'm going to be repeating a phrase that I said just recently a couple times, but this also feels like a big hole in my board game experience. My 2017 game is Gaia Project. I am a fan of Terra Mystica, which was the first version of this game before it was reimplemented into Gaia Project, but feels like now almost at the cusp of being considered a classic in the heavy Euro game sort of arena, and one that I should play, you know, if it's like Terra Mystica, which obviously is, has some level of, quite a high level probably, of interaction where you're cutting opponents off and vying for space in the space, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, one that I've wanted to play for a while. Gaia Project is my selection for 2017 game.
It's very much like Terra Mystica, but better.
Yeah. I feel like the pendulum has swung back and forth on that.
Yeah.
Initially, I feel like everybody was saying, yeah, Sky Project is definitely a better implementation of Terra Mystica, and now feel like it's going the other way.
Yeah.
People are like, actually.
I'm with you. Now when I say that, people disagree with me more often than not. I still maintain it's the better game. It is slightly less interactive in the area control aspect, which I think is the thing that people love about Terra Mystica, is like it feels...
I see.
But I still think that people undersell how competitive it is in that space as well. Cool, yeah. We should definitely play this.
I have not played this either, but it did not make my list. Just from, it's like a game I kind of like, but with less area control. But the game that I chose is in the running for the most boring board game cover of all time, and also in the running for the most incessantly talked about by other board game media in a way that is annoying.
Wait,
Calimala. Sorry.
I was trying to get to that. Okay, go ahead.
Calimala looks really boring, and yet people still keep talking about it. They keep bringing it up. Calimala plays great. It's not too long and has a nice decision space, trademark. And I've never played it. Mark, you've played it. Nealon, have you played it?
Nope.
And you like it. It's very good. I think I'm going to like it a lot is the thing.
Yeah, but it is like super boring looking. But yeah, it is very good. It's got this like ramping up worker placement where you place a worker on a spot, you do the action once, but then if somebody else does that same action, you get to do it again. And it's just this rising level of like, now I get to do the action 5 times. It's this like exploding sort of situation where when you teach it, it feels crazy. Like, wait, I'm going to do it again and again and again. But then in practice, it works really, really well.
Love to see it. Let us move on to our birth year, 2018. I think that's our birth year.
Yeah, that is our birth year. Yeah, February.
What do you got for us, Nealon? So,
the game from 2018 that I most want to play, this is a game that I don't remember hearing anything about in 2018, 2019, 2020. Only in the last year, I feel, are people suddenly talking a lot about Obsession. I don't know if I'm correct in that, but I feel like for whatever reason, people are going crazy over this game. This is a game that is sort of...
Nealon.
What?
Use the sentence. Like, if it's in front of you, hit the ball, If it's a softball, we can't be going crazy over Obsession.
Callan, that is too obvious. I would never do that.
Nealon doesn't eat the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, exactly. In recent years, though, Callan, what you might find, though, is that people have had an obsession with this game. This is a card game with a Victorian theme. I believe that you are managing your estate. Is that right?
Yeah, it really works for a Downton Abbey head like you.
That's what I was looking for. The pull I was looking for. Yeah, so it's Downton Abbey, the board game, right? Like, that's the idea.
Which is something you've been dying for years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, like, I've never seen that show, but I'm a sucker for that period. Like, I love period pieces from that era.
You love Ladies in Waiting. You love Footman.
Jane Austen. Like, absolutely. I'm like a sucker for a lot of the fiction from that era. And this just feels like one I would like on the virtue of its theme alone. To be perfectly honest, don't know too much about how it plays, except that people seem to like it a heck of a lot. Yeah, that's Obsession.
Yeah, I've played this one. I think the reason why it didn't really pop initially is because it's literally, I think, printed by the designer and artist Dan Halligan and self-published. So it was really sort of like something that was a groundswell that sort of built it up. There's a worker placement. There's also like a drafting element and sort of buying from a tableau. I think the most interesting aspect is the theme. The other mechanisms in the game are blended in a fairly unique way, but I don't think anything is like earth-shattering. But yeah, but a game that I enjoyed. I certainly enjoyed it. My 2018 game is a little bit of a cheat because this came out earlier, but I'm going to go with the Ultimate Edition here. So I'm going to go with Mage Knight Ultimate Edition. Again, another huge hole. This is the last time I'm going to say it on this episode, but a huge hole in my board gaming experience. Mage Knight, now that I've started getting into solo games, Mage Knight is I think the big mountain that I've yet to climb as to like the ultimate solo game. So yeah, Mage Knight Ultimate for me.
I'm very curious to hear where you land on this, Mark, because I suspect you will have the same issue I did, which is just to say that it's a lot to set up for a solo game. But yeah, very, very curious to see what you think of it.
I'm hoping to go with the thing where I just set it up and then play it and then I'm able to leave it on a table and come back to it. Yeah. Maybe that gets around it. Yeah, we'll see.
For whatever reason, I have a fascination with trying this game from 2018. It is very beautiful. It is a bog standard Euro game. I just have not played it, and I hear everyone talks about it. People still talk about it. This is the game where you exploit or you don't exploit the Jade strategy to win. This is Gùgōng. I just never played it, and if I'm going to play a Euro game, it may as well be beautiful. I want to try Gùgōng.
I'm glad you picked this. I was prepared to tell you that instead of whatever you picked, you should have picked Gùgōng. So...
Well, the other one, that Underwater Cities, is also stuck there in my brain. I don't think I'll like either of them.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, though, I just want to play both of them because I hear them. I hear them and I want them.
I can say with some confidence that you will like Gùgōng more than Underwater Cities. But yeah, I would say the jury's out on whether you like either, for sure. But would love to try it with you.
Let's end the decade strong and quickly with 2019, the game that is most recent that we still haven't played, that we really want to play. Nealon, what you got for us? Is it a crossover?
I think it probably is a crossover.
I think it is a crossover.
Barrage.
The namesake.
Yeah. I mean,
Four crossovers.
The board
Can you
game.
believe it?
Barrage. Yeah, I actually recently acquired this after wanting to for a long time. Only to discover
Even though I already owned
only
it.
to discover that Kellen already had it. This is a game by Simone Luciani, who is one of the co-designers of Tolkien, a game I absolutely love. This is the crew of the Italian designers whose games I tend to like a lot. Another one people won't stop talking about and just have been compelling me to play. So we got to give this a go, Kellen. This is the fourth game for our crossover game night.
We should do this for an episode. I can teach you Barrage and Caverna and one other and Kanban, and we can have a night of it. I would love to. This is a great game. This is a game we should do, and we're gonna love this game. Kellen is gonna love this game too.
They ruined our search engine optimization.
Yeah.
And that is very important in the year 2022. I don't know what they were thinking. SEO was important in 2019, but they didn't think about that when they released the game. So
yeah, pluses and minuses.
It's hard to be objective. Mark, close this out. What
Sure.
is the game from 2019 we need to play?
So mine, I feel like we're ending this a little bit of a thud here because this is not a game that feels like a hole in my board gaming history or experience, but one that I think we tried out at Gen Con 2019, and I just recently acquired this, Crusader Kings, which I think is based off a video game.
Yes.
So this is a game where you are a royal family and you're trying to conquer the land. And the thing I like about this is like you have like generations and generations of family members and they are born with traits.
Yeah.
And so some traits are positive, some traits are negative. And I've heard mixed things about it, but I just like the idea of like you're leading a generation of your family and they, you might have a son or daughter that is very brave or very whatever, and then another one that might be more troublesome or have some issues, and just that seems interesting. It seems like it might also be very unfair and very luck heavy, but still interesting enough that it's one that I am interested in trying out.
Yeah, if you're into progeny, as Kellen is, this is the game for you.
Yeah.
I've always heard great things about the video game version of this. Like, this is in the vein of a Civilization-style grand strategy game. Never gone around to trying it, but on that note alone, was very, very intrigued by the board game as well.
And that is going to do it for today's episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. It's an interesting exercise to go back through the decade and think about where you were and where you could be and where your progeny was or is and are. And please join us on the Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord and tell us the games from the last decade that you need to play or the ones that we missed out on or forgot to say. Thank you so much to Heart Society for their song What's on Your Mind, Kid, from their album Wake the Queens. You can find us on all forms of social media to bug us. You can email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. You can join our guild at Board Game Geek or join our Facebook group on, you guessed it, Facebook. Thank you for joining us. So long and good day.
Good night.
Goodbye.
3, 2, 1, clap. Oh, I forgot.
That clap.
Nealon
You
can't even
say 3, 2, 1 clap like that.
Oh.
Throws the whole thing off.
Oh, you 3, 2, 1. Well, I thought you were going to make fun of his clap because he can't even.
Yeah. Clap. Should we do another clap? Do we need to do another
Sure.
clap?
Sure.
Redux. 3, 2, 1.
Perfect. That's how we used to do it. That's a professional way to clap.
That's how we've done it for 200 episodes.
3, 2, 1, clap and go on.
Clap and go. And when you say clap, it looks like a clap in the timeline. That's good. Clap. It's like not a clap, but it is a clap. All right, here we are, 2:33. It's happening. Hello, and welcome to episode number... All right, Nealon, ask me what makes America the greatest country in the world.
Kellen, what makes America the greatest country in the world?
Neelan, when you ask what makes America the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the you're talking about. Yosemite? All right.
Thank you.
No. Kellen.
Sure.
Kellen.
Sure.
You could thank Kellen.
Has
Go
Miss
back
Felix
in
have
your
to
room.
call you out?
Yeah, they laughed. They laughed. No, she's all on board. We workshopped this yesterday. Okay, great. There was just no way to ask that authentically. All right, okay, here we go. Oh, but now we have to talk about Yosemite. Yosemite is a review copy.